My name is Itzik and I'm one of the local guides here. I will just start my guiding here and you will join me whenever you can. We have a birthright group here, maybe the last in Israel this season. And it was a wonderful season with almost 10,000 participants, and we are expecting a very, very busy summer with somewhere like another maybe 30,000, 25 to 30,000 participants that will be here during July and August. So the birthright, and we have a mission of a junior high from somewhere in Los Angeles, joining Israeli kids from a local school here, and another mission from California somewhere, yes. San Diego. Hey, oh wow, I mentioned San Diego. I didn't know you guys are from San Diego. And so, this is all of us here, all of us Americans, Israelis, and my name is Itzik, as I said. This place is where Israel was born. Israel was declared on May 14th, 1948, by David Ben-Gurion, who we mentioned a few times, and you probably know a little bit about. At the ceremony of independence, 400 people gathered here. There are something like 100 here, less than 100 right now. Just try to imagine this place with 400 adults wearing their tuxedos with no air condition. The month is May. This is winter outside. The joke outside is what we call winter in Tel Aviv. Just try to imagine the month of May, and probably the heat inside this place was stifling, no air conditioning, the windows were shut. Makes you wonder, why was Israel declared in such an extreme conditions? Why here in this tiny auditorium? Why was why was Israel declared in a place called Tel Aviv and not where you would expect? Well, Jerusalem. Why Tel Aviv? In other words, what is going on behind the scenes of maybe one of the biggest dramas in the modern history of the Jewish people, the birth of Israel? To understand this, I will take you back now to the year 1945 and to the most important day in the calendar of the human race, May 8, 1945. What's so special there? This is VE Day. Yes, I think in English you call it VE Day, Victor Hero Day, because the Americans are still busy in the Far East, but the war is over, May 8, 1945. They celebrate May 8 every year. This was the time when the war was over. This was the time when good people defeated Satan himself. This is how I see it anyhow. And the war was over. How do you know when the war is over? How can you tell that the war is over? 100%. It is sure now. The war is over. You know, you can tell it by the people that are packing. You know, when the war is over, you pack and you go home. This is how you know when the war is over. The war is over only when they tell you it is over. Thank you for your service to your country. Pack your things and go back to Chicago. That's it. Okay. If you're an American, if you're English, you go back to London. So what you have on May 8, 1945 is hundreds of millions of people packing to go home. And believe me, they went home. Even the Germans were allowed to go home. And this is what you do after wars. You go home, you rebuild your country, you plant trees, you make babies, I don't know, the things that you do after wars. And if, let's say, if my name is, let's say, Otto Frank, and I was taken from my hiding place in Amsterdam, somewhere in late 44, with my family to Auschwitz. I'm Otto Frank. I had a daughter called Anna, and the war is over, and everybody is gone. I mean, my entire family is murdered, and I survived. I'm the father. I survived. It is now the end of the war, and somebody will tell me probably, Mr. Frank, pack your things and go home, it is over. I have 3 problems. That's very particular moment, I have 3 problems. The first problem is that I do not recognize the 35-kilo monster that I see in the mirror. The second problem is I have nothing to pack. And the third problem is I have nowhere to go to. So it is very important for you to understand that in 1945 the war was over for millions and millions of people. It was not over for the Jewish people. The war is still waged in many, many fronts all over the world. It is not over for our grandparents, not at all. It is far from being over. What you have is 400,000 Jews that were left behind in DP camps in Europe. It is one thing to liberate a camp, and we can all imagine how heroic and brave and amazing was it when they liberated the camps. Maybe your grandparents participated in this, I don't know. It is really great. It's really, you know, you liberate a camp, you kill all them, you shoot all the Nazi bad guys, you open the gates, you bring to the people you find there a bowl of soup and a hug and hope and medical aid and a rabbi and a priest. What you cannot supply as a young soldier when you liberate a camp is a solution. And one day when the war was over, everybody went home. And these people that were found there behind the barbed wires, they have no home to go to. Many Jews left Europe. They were the lucky ones. They came to America. They came to other places. As a matter of fact, just for your knowledge, the biggest Holocaust survivor community in one city outside Israel is where? You would say New York, won't you? Or Buenos Aires. Even Florida, maybe. But actually it's Melbourne, Australia. Melbourne, Australia. Melbourne is, I don't know, the Australians pronounce it in a very peculiar way. They say Melbourne. Melbourne, something like that. And it is far away. Melbourne, Australia is like next door to end of everything. It's a beautiful place, and they have an absolutely remarkable community with amazing life there. I mean, truly, I've been there, I visited them, their museum, their community activities that they have there, their schools, amazing. So this is how far they went. So far they went to one of the only places that will accept them in large numbers. Others came to the shores of America. When the doors are open there, at a certain point of time, the Americans said, wait, we cannot take the entire refugees of planet Earth. So the doors are sealed. Others went to other places, South America, to wherever they could. But some, a few 100,000, were left behind. And they sit in DP camps. What's a DP camp? Displaced persons. They have no hope whatsoever. They do not, their tragedy is not over. The tragedy of 6 million of us, if you do not understand it by now, is the simple, horrible fact that they do not have an address. How terrible it is when you do not have an address. You know, the other day I lost my cell phone, and I felt like I'm naked. I didn't know what to do. Where do we go from here now? What am I going to do with my life? You know, my entire life was in my iPhone. My entire life, all the pictures, everything is there. And I was lost. Chapter 4 was very good, if you're watching Lost. I'm downloading 5, we'll see what happens. Okay. So this is, you know, your cell phones today is who you are, is your address. The first thing that you pack when you leave home is your cell phone, or you make sure that somebody right next to you will have means of communication, a cell phone. Why do you need your cell phone? Because in case of trouble, oh yes, we love Israel very much, and we come here to support Israel and to be here and so on. We love Israel very much. But in case of trouble, the first thing that we will do, believe me, is we take out our cell phone and we click few numbers on this piece of plastic, and we use this Israeli technology. Israelis are behind the cell phone technology, just for knowledge. this technology that changed the face of the human race, and we call home, we say, Houston, we have a problem. And then somebody will answer. Somebody will answer, isn't it? Look at our life today. See how our life is very comfortable. We are not rich, we are not poor, but our life is okay. We are not born in Darfur. We are not born in Haiti. We are the lucky ones. We are born on the bottom side of the bread. When we wake up in the morning, the biggest problem that we have, the biggest mission that we have every morning is to choose what to wear. It's a very difficult task because we stand in front of our closet and we are whoa. And it's not because we don't know what to wear. It's not because we don't have clothes. It's because we have too many. And then we choose a pair of shoes. Now, come on, between us now that we are all alone here, how many pairs of shoes you have all around the house? In so many drawers and boxes and here hiding places, in the attic, in the basement. How many pairs of shoes? Come on. Every now and then we throw half of our collection so we can buy more, isn't it? The collection of my wife is pushing like 30 and she's always complaining that she has nothing to wear. And this is our life, come on. And when we go out every morning, there is a policeman at every corner. And our life is comfortable. Half of the world is starving. And we do not understand what does it mean to have no address. You know, when the Nazis are knocking at the door, let's go back to Mr. Frank. The Nazis are knocking at the door. The first thing any decent human being wants to do when this knock is on the door is to run to the nearest telephone and dial what? 911, yes? Or 100 if it's Israel. You want to call for help. But when 6 million of us pick up the telephone, who can they call? Okay, say it. Okay. Who can they call?
Ghostbusters.
Thank you. Now that you took it out of your American system, we can continue. You can call, but this time my young friend, you know, this time Ghostbusters, Dan Aykroyd cannot help because the ghost on the front door is for real this time. There is a black demon on our front door, and he has the initials SS on his sleeve, and he's going to murder the family very soon. There is nothing at the other end of the line. Can we understand this? Our grandparents can understand this.
Yeah.
We cannot understand this. There is nothing there. What army can you call? What police? What embassy? Who can you call? Can you order tickets and fly an Al? There is no El Al. What's El Al?
Airline.
There is no, you know, just think about it. What? The Jews have an airline? El Al, and it will bring Jews from all over the world to a free Jewish country, to the only place where Jews are allowed to defend Jews? Is this a reality? Is this true? Can you just order a ticket and fly to a place where you will be accepted and protected? You want to go back to the synagogues of your grandparents, 80, 90 years from now, walk into their synagogues and try to convince them that everything that you saw here is a reality? They will scoff at your face for 1 hour. Try to convince them that only through the Israeli satellites in orbit, the Americans find a way to send videos from Mars. I mean, it was one thing to put your vehicles or your robots on Mars, which is like the greatest achievement ever. But another problem is how to video from there. So they used our technology in orbit. The Jews have 5 satellites orbiting in space right now. What do they do when they meet each other? Argue? Do they circle and sing Hava Nagila? What is going on here? 50 years ago, this country starved. You want to go home, Google Israel in the beginning of the 50s? This country starved. It's cities of tents as far as the eyes could see. And you know, it was so poor that they had to ration food. People spoke in so many languages. Look at us today. We gave the world a cell phone. We gave the world the XP Windows, developed in Israel, the Windows thing, Israelis. Your flash drive, the USB thing, the invention of the USB. and maybe the first serious electric car is on the way now. Israelis again. And we grow vegetables in the desert with the technology that you can see only in Lucas films. And we buy aircrafts and we put stuff in them, and we have one of the mightiest air force in the world. We do things here. We took more Nobel prizes than any other people in every field that you can dream of. And in the 50s, this country starved. You want to go back in time and tell it to your grandparents, they will scoff at your face. It was a wild dream for them. 6 million of us have no address, they have nowhere to go to. And this was their tragedy. And Ben Gurion, the leader of the Israelis, the Jewish people here, understood perfectly this tragedy. So when he wrote the document of independence, here is the highlight of the document. I want to read these 5 lines to you so you know what was declared here. The 5 lines of the actual declaration. I won't read it all, it's like very long. But this is the actual declaration. It says here, accordingly we, the people of the Temporary Jewish Council, this is the Temporary Jewish Council, 37 of them were invited to the ceremony, 25 made it. 12 are missing because they were caught behind enemy lines in the besieged Jerusalem. Israel was declared during the War of Independence. Jerusalem was under siege. Jerusalem is far away from here, 50 miles in the mountains. Woo! So 12 are missing, they couldn't be here, and those present here signed their names on the document, leaving 12 blank spaces for their friends in Jerusalem that came after the war, a few months later, and added their signatures. So it goes here. Accordingly, we, the members of the Temporary Jewish Council, the representative of the Hebrew community and the Zionist movement, gathered here on the day of the termination of the British mandate in the land of Israel. The Brits had a mandate to control the entire Middle East, a mandate that they received from the League of Nations. Right after the First World War, they simply took this part of the world from the hands of the Turks and controlled the Middle East from 1917 till May 14, 1948. This was the day that they left. This was the day that Israel was declared. And the members of the Zionist movement gathered on the day of the termination of the British mandate in the land of Israel, and within our natural and historical rights, on the basis of UN resolution, we hereby declare on the establishment of can we say it together? It sounds nice. The establishment of? Establishment of? No. I want to continue with this.
Jewish state. Jewish state.
What? What was declared here? Some of you said the state of Israel, the others said
Jewish state.
Jewish state. What was declared here?
Nation.
The establishment of a Jewish state in the land of Israel to be known as the state of Israel. So as you can see, my dear friends, not the state of Israel was declared here. What was declared here? The Jewish state. Now then what you have here is an ocean of a difference. 600,000 Israelis lived here in 1948. Ben Gurion was not addressing them. Ben Gurion saw himself as the voice of Jewish history. He saw himself as the voice of 6 million that couldn't be here, and another 11 million Jews all over the world in 1948. A Jewish state as for all Jews, where and whenever they may be. That's what happened here. A Jewish state, not an Israeli only for the Israelis. And Ben Gurion was giving a hug from this room to 11 million people. Now, I don't know where your grandparents are in 1948, I really don't know. But I promise you that most of them need a hug. And you have 400,000 Jews in DP camps in Europe. But you have another 900,000 Jews. It's not over, you see. We have a tendency to speak about the Jews of Europe. But you have so many Jewish communities all over the world. What happened to them? What happened to the Jews of Iran and Iraq? What happened to those amazing, rich, successful communities that survived for thousands of years there. They were destroyed to pieces, and people were smuggled through the borders of Iran and Iraq to safety in Israel. This is how my grandparents came here. My grandpa is from Iran, my grandma is from Iraq. What happened to the Jews of Morocco? I can tell you, after so many of them were murdered by the local Muslim or Arabs, you know, they had riots there, they had pogroms there, and the Jews suffered greatly in the ghettos of Meknash, Casablanca, and Fez. Many of them were smuggled on boats to the shores of Israel just after the war. So my grandpa came from Morocco. My grandma is from Tiberias, so she was here. In other words, what I'm really trying to tell you is you are talking now to an Apache here. You see, I never left this country. And I did not arrive here on a boat to sit on the expense of somebody. This is your story, not mine. It's very important to understand that you have local Jews here, you have Jewish presence here throughout the history. So this is the Jews of Tunisia, many of them were sent to Bergen-Belsen. The Jews of Libya that were rallied in the desert and shot into holes by the advancing Nazi army along the north coast of Africa. The Jews of Yemen, you know how many Jews were murdered in Yemen? You know the situation there was awful. The Jews of Ethiopia under the fascist Italian army, they did not speak honey. 900,000 Jews became refugees during that war, and right after the war, sitting on their suitcases with no address, on top of what you have in Europe. And Ben-Gurion understood this agony, and Ben-Gurion spoke to these people. And from this room, on May 14, 1948, Ben-Gurion declared the end of the war for the Jewish people. It is the end of the war, said Ben-Gurion from this room. Pack your things and come home. It was the first time after so many years when Jews could actually go to a place that would accept them. And this is the drama that took place here in this room. And this is the message that came out from this room. Now the situation here in Israel was not very good. 600,000 Jews lived here and 1.2 million Arabs. And the British ruled this country. Their policy was to blockade the shores of Israel, not allowing any Jewish immigration here. The British army was responsible for the deportation of at least 250,000 Jews, refugees that left Europe during the late 30s into the 40s, and until the day they left, each and every Jewish boat with Jewish refugees that came to the shores of Israel was immediately exiled back to Europe by the British army. People that survived the war and came here and were rejected back to Europe. The British policy was to pump oil in Iraq. Iraq is 2,000 miles from here to the east. They placed their pipeline from Iraq to the shores of Israel, the shortest way to England, and their oil came from the shores of Israel. Now they don't need a bunch of thousands and hundreds of thousands Jewish refugees that have torn shoes and potatoes to offer, entering Israel, coming into Israel, and jeopardize their delicate relationships with the Arabs, and maybe put in danger the free flow of the oil. They need oil. So the British Empire chose Jews of oil. They chose oil. So this is what you have here. The shores of Israel are blocked. It is not an option. Jews scattered all over the world, and those who do not have the right papers will stay sitting on their suitcases wherever they are. This is the international circumstances of what is going on after the war. And only in 1947, the UN decided to address the problem and to find a solution. And the UN came up with a peace that they called the Partition Plan for Palestine. It's a good time to show you the map of Israel. You're probably familiar with this map already. Maybe you guys, especially because I know that Irad will show the map a few times. So Israel is the size of New Jersey. You already know that, I guess. And half of this country is a wasteland desert. So Israel is like half the size of New Jersey with almost, we spoke about already, almost 11 million people. 3.5 million of them more or less are Palestinians in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. and another 7.2 million citizens of Israel, of them 5.6 million Jews and the rest are Arabs. What you have here is 5.6 million Jews and the rest are Arabs. It means that Israel is the biggest Jewish country in the world today. This is bad news, because America used to be the biggest Jewish country in the world. Up until 2 years ago, America is the biggest Jewish country in the world. But since the numbers of Jewish people in America are dropping rapidly, we are losing big time in America. You guys are no longer, and we are talking about less than 5 million Jews in America. The numbers are not accurate here, okay? And something like 13 million Jews in the world, all over the world. So 5 million in America, almost 6 million in Israel, and the rest are scattered. In Europe, the situation is really bad. We are an endangered species, I think you say in English. So in 1947, the UN came up with a plan what to do, how to end the agony of the both sides. And the UN advised this plan that called to part this country between the Arabs and the Jews, so that all the orange parts will be Jewish, to two states on the same country. The orange parts will be Jewish, the yellow parts will go to the Arabs, and Jerusalem, the so holy Jerusalem. Jerusalem is holy for like how many people? 4 billion people see Jerusalem as the holiest place. 4 billion people. Do you understand that everything that you touch around Jerusalem is holy to 4 billion people? Do you understand how delicate and sometimes dangerous, almost explosive situation is around Jerusalem? If anything should happen there, it can lead to a world catastrophe in hours. So Jerusalem and Bethlehem is like the holiest spot on the face of earth for so many people. And the UN said we would turn, the UN was advised, the UN suggested to turn Jerusalem and Bethlehem into some kind of an international holy zone, international grounds, holy grounds. The UN will protect these two cities. Special UN troops will sit there, and it will be open for all people of the world, for all the people of the world to come and worship. So let's go over it again. Orange to the Jews, yellow to the Arabs, two states living in peace on the same country, in the same country. Jerusalem, international safe zone, holy grounds, and the Brits are asked kindly to evacuate the Middle East. What is the Middle East? Everybody's talking about the Middle East. The Middle East is a British term that they gave to this part of the world, and they took it from the hands of the Turks in 1917. The Middle East is Lebanon in the north here, Syria and Iraq in the east, together with Jordan and Saudi in the south, with Egypt. So Egypt, Saudi, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Israel. This is the Middle East. Okay? And so the UN partition plan spoke about the British pulling out from this part of the world, cutting Israel between the Arabs and the Jews, Jerusalem safe as a holy grounds, and peace and tranquility will come to planet Earth. Jewish refugees will come home, no more dispute between the Jews and the Arabs, no borders, no fences, no armies. The UN saw this place as a kind of something like we have in Europe today. You know how it goes in Europe today? Let's say I live in Rome, Italy, and I want to eat a good apple pie. What do I have to do? I have to go to Vienna. The apple pie is there. How do I go to Vienna? I go into my Alfa Romeo, because I'm Italian, and I drive through the Alps, and it will take me to Vienna in no time. On the way, I do not see fences, I do not see armies, there's nothing there. I cannot tell when I pass into the next country. It's an open space. And this is the vision of the UN for Israel. Two states of the same country, open space, no borders, no armies. As you can see, and the map cannot lie, the UN was very generous with the Jewish people. When they decided to include the entire desert Negev wasteland into our part. Apart from the Negev that was generously included into our cut, the Jewish state will be a strip around the coast of 150 miles, and another strip of 100 miles in the mountains of the Galilee, give or take 20 to 50 miles here and there, okay? So it's like 250 miles in the desert, and the width of the Jewish state, the width is 7 miles. Now you cannot protect 7 miles, even if your name is Superman. There is no way to protect 7 miles. But if you look at the bright side, at least you can jog it in the evenings, and you can run from one side of your country to the other side in no time. This is very nice. Look at the bright side. So we waited 2,000 years, that's what we did. 2,000 years to be acknowledged. We waited 2,000 years for the world to recognize our right to be free people in our native homeland and defend our children. You know, Zionism is not very hard to understand. Zionism is very simple. Zionism is when the Jews are asking what you have. When the Jews are asking what everybody else has. To live in their native homeland as free people and defend their children. And not more and not less. If it is good for the Saudis and the Iranians and the Americans and the Argentinians and the Germans and the people of, I don't know, let's say, Ivory Coast, it is good for us. That's what they're asking. And so when the UN came up with this plan, in the eyes of many Jews, it was really hope in the horizon. So they took a vote on it. It was a night to remember in the lives of your grandparents. Many, many Jews all over the world were sitting by the radio. The BBC broadcast the roll call from the United Nations. The United Nations are in a place called Lake Success, Long Island, New York. And they vote, country after country, they vote yes, no, abstain, yes, no, abstain. 33 countries said yes, 13 said no, 10 abstain, 2/3 majority, the motion passed. For the first time after so many years, the world recognized the right of the Jews to exist. And so many Jews all over the world celebrated. For them it was the time when they saw hope. You know, we can go home, we were acknowledged by the world. And Jews celebrated all over the world. The celebrations were so big that in Tel Aviv, they opened all the bars and all the pubs free of charge for one night. Can you imagine that? That's it, one night, one time, that's it. Don't start to celebrate, okay? And Jews all over the world are celebrating, but the Arabs did not celebrate. In the eyes of the Arabs, what happened in the United Nations was a catastrophe. The Arabs felt as if somebody is trying to barge into their living room, pinch a tent. The chief spokesman of the Arab League put their let's say, anger in words. It's like declaring a war, but in a nice diplomatic words. He said, Arab nations, this is a quote, are not to be expected to accept any Jewish presence on the soil of Palestine. Any Jewish presence. What's any? If I'm not mistaken, in this context, any means 0, not even 1. And on the next morning, the Arabs launched what they called in those days the mother of all jihad's war against Jewish presence on our Holy Land. This war is what we call the War of Independence. On the 30th of November 1947, the Arabs rejected this peace plan. This peace plan that handed the prime cuts of Israel, with Jerusalem as an island in the middle of their territories, to their hands. This peace plan that meant hope for the both sides was rejected on the morning of the 30th of November 1947. The plan lasted 12 hours. 2 Jewish buses were terrorized on their way to Jerusalem, and a civil war erupted here, not by Jewish initiative as I explained. This was the War of Independence that will last 15 months. The most terrible war, the cruelest and the bloodiest conflict in this part of the world in modern history, the 20th century. A war that claimed the lives of 1% of our entire population. Can you imagine? Just think about your country. How many people in America? 300 or so, 50 maybe, millions. 1% would be 3.5 million. God forbid, 3.5 million dead soldiers in 15 months campaign, and double that wounded. This was the war of independence for us, and Israel was very poor. The people who participated in that war, many of them are the survivors of the Holocaust, that came here off the boats, received a gun, and were sent on buses to the front, without understanding even what happened to them. They fell. And we had to face, the first 6 months of the war was us facing the local Arabs. The first 6 months of the war was a terrible civil war between the two populations here. The Jewish population, 600,000, and the Arab population, 1.2 million. Arab countries around Israel are being controlled by the Brits. So the countries around Israel do not dare to invade Israel and join the war. They do not dare to move. They are controlled by British. The Brits control the Jordanian army. In the Jordanian army, the officers spoke British English. The same with Egypt and Iraq. They had the puppet kingdom. So Arab countries do not invade Israel in the first 6 months of that war. It is just a civil war between us and the local Arabs. The situation is deteriorating as the months go by. You see, we are blocked from all directions. The British are blocking the shores of Israel. We cannot bring help. And all around us, the entire Arab world, aiding the local Arabs, but yet they do not participate physically. They do not invade Israel, not in the first 6 months. By the beginning of May, 6 months after the war started, the war is waged for 6 months. By the beginning of May 48, the situation is very bad. Jerusalem is besieged, 100,000 Jews are starving there. The Jewish quarter inside the the old city of Jerusalem, thank you, is about to fall, and they will fall. The block of villages outside Jerusalem, the Jewish villages called Gush Etzion, is about to fall, and they will fall. The Galilee is burning. Cities like Sfat, and maybe you've seen Sfat already. Cities like Sfat and Nahariya are coming in and out of siege. Many tiny villages in the Negev desert, Jewish villages with pioneers, are behind enemy lines. And the only place that was not